Workshop, public transport challenges and the futures. So, Doug, you're the future of public transport.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're very kind. Thank you for the opportunity to present to the council today. I'm going to cover what the current situation is with the network and how we're delivering public transport. Give some advice on the changing environment that we're facing at the moment, and hopefully provide some direction that we can take to. Am I pointing this in the right direction?
Click, and if the chair doesn't flip over, yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
This is not the Graham Norton show.
Yeah, get the eject button.
You're a chair.
This doesn't work. Oh.
Can you go have a go at pushing the button, see if it goes ahead?
Look at that.
Oh, did I do that?
But can you move on?
No.
No, it's
You
okay.
might just need to
That's
when,
all right.
when you want it changed.
Turn it in the
Okay.
other direction.
Can I have page one, please? Thank you. So I've outlined the purpose of this workshop, and it is, again, to advise on the current situation, go through the changing environment that we're in, and this environment has changed significantly in the last 2 years, 3 years, with change of government for the first task, and then funding restrictions that have been imposed. And hopefully we get a council direction or advice on a council direction. The RPTP, the Regional Public Transport Plan, is what we're working on at the moment. This is reviewed after the first 3 years of the 10-year plan, and that was implemented in 2021. So we're right on the cusp of getting that together now. I've got some abbreviations there because everyone in rating loves to use abbreviations. So just to remind everybody, GPS is the government policy statement, and this drives funding and every other decision that surrounds transport. Public transport is part of that. Regional Land Transport Plan, you'll recall that we've just been through a review for the Regional Land Transport Plan. The RPTP, the Regional Public Transport Plan, that is being reviewed currently. Again, these are 10-year strategic documents, and they are reviewed within the first 3 years of implementation. NLTP is the National Land Transport Program, and we talked about that not so long ago with the changes we've experienced in funding.
So, Doug, just on that, where are we at in the cycle of those strategic plans?
2021 was both the Regional Land Transport Plan and the Regional Public Transport Plan. So they're aligned.
Yeah, but they don't sit outside government influence, or they can change with government.
No, they don't. It's all part of a combined approach to regional planning. NZTA have a say in these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were we? All right, next please. Thank you. So ICC is one of the few territorial authorities that runs a public transport service. This was agreed with Environment Southland back in 2001. The MOU, which I've been examining at the moment, is still the same one. It hasn't been updated for 23 years, and it's probably not fit for purpose now. I've started talks with Environment Southland about that. There was some indication from Environment Southland that they wanted to take back the planning function for public transport and other modes. We haven't had those discussions yet. I'm not sure what's triggered that, but that was very, very recently when I was consulting on the RPTP. We have obligations obviously with NZTA, our funding agents, and contract management and renewal of contracts, which we're going through now. All NZTA funding goes directly to the ICC, so Environment Southland receives nothing. The MOU covers ownership of various things, long-term plans, which is the one they want to really examine, operations, contract management, customer relations, and upgrades and renewals of infrastructure. Now that's an interesting one because we weren't actually granted a great deal of funding from the NLTP in terms of renewal or infrastructure around that, and that gives me a moment of pause, given that we're going through procurement and we will need to upgrade infrastructure to make those happen.
So the funding comes direct from central government to us,
To us,
doesn't
yes.
go via ES.
Doesn't go by ES. No, we basically bid for it when we do our funding bids.
And so what other local authorities have that relationship like we have? Is there
Well,
many?
I actually don't know of any. I think there are some, but they're very, very rare. Yes.
Yeah,
So here's the history lesson.
yeah, be good, thanks.
Regional councils sit with these contracts because quite often the transport routes cross borders for
Yeah.
territorial authorities. One of the previous bus companies, former Invercargill Passenger Transport, had gone to Environment Southland with a scheme that sought to maximise the opportunities through the subsidies for passengers that could result in an off-peak free bus service in Invercargill. Environment Southland expressed no interest in following that up. At that time, the bus company had said to Environment Southland, what if we asked Invercargill City Council if it was keen on managing the contract? Their response was, we don't care.
Right.
So they came to us, we went to Environment Southland, offered to take the contract over, and that's why it sits with us and has done ever since.
Right. Thank you.
I think as a follow-up to that, my discussions with Environment Southland, where they have absolutely no interest in running the service at all.
That said, it is also their duty.
Yeah, under legislation, yeah.
So that's where we sit at the moment. Next, please. Part of our public transport service delivery is total mobility. I've got a little bit of experience in this from other centres. It is massively oversubscribed compared to funding. And we were lucky in that I was able to obtain top-up funding, so we essentially broke even on it last year, but it would be close to 80% oversubscribed on the funding we receive. And that's because the criteria for total mobility is not set by council. So we can go down that route if we want to make sure that we're only reaching a certain amount of people, but it would mean limiting the service. And as our funding has gone up in the total mobility area from the new NLTP fund, I think we're covered at the moment. So that is good news in terms of funding. So we can continue to do that. At the moment, it was subsidised during or just after COVID as a response. 75% of the fare was subsidised. So they were paying very, very little for the service. And essentially, in some instances, some people make one trip a week, some people make several a day. So it's about limiting that and putting a policy around it.
So Doug, that doesn't cover anything that, say, ACC or anything would be separate to that, yeah?
No, it's purely if you have a disability card, disability assessment, you're entitled to use total mobility. It's a very, very good service because it's good for the elderly and infirm as well. So it meets a criteria for me. I think it's a good thing.
And how do you qualify for that criteria?
That I don't know the depth of that. You apply on the basis of what your disability is or your mobility disadvantages, and it's assessed.
You apply to NZTA?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Just a question, Doug. Do we only do this for Invercargill City, or are we responsible for Southland wide?
Yes, south and wide. We do have total mobility clients in Gore, but only in Gore because that's the only way we can provide that service with operators. So we have Gore and Invercargill at the moment.
Has there been any requests for service from the likes of Winton and places like that, or?
Not in my time here, but yeah, it's a valid point. Could well be people there that would love to use this service. The Regional Public Transport Plan. Now, this is the plan that we're reviewing at the moment. It's called a mid-term review, although it's not in the middle of the term, it's just at the start. It's developed again under that MOU with Environment Southland by ICC as opposed to Environment Southland. And overpinning that is the Regional Land Transport Plan, which again has gone through a review and Council has reviewed it as well. It's generally aligned, the RPTP is generally aligned to the RLTP, and we try and keep them timed together. Regional public transport plan review is now underway, so we should have that completed by the end of November, and then we'll do some consultation accordingly as a draft. Next, please. So the current RPTP priorities, we have three. When we review the RPTP, we may end up with more. I would assume we would end up with more priorities because it's moved on since then. So ensuring access to essential goods and services, and that's quite a broad statement to make because it includes obviously moving people around as well as goods and services and giving access to those. Now there's some interesting statistics there. People over 65 make up 16.5% of the population here. Similar to Australia, at least in the UK, but in 2006 that percentage was only 12, and it's continuing to go that way across the country. So the population's getting older, but there is a small rump of very young people coming through as well. So we have either end of the spectrum which we need to provide for. The other priority, value for money. It's not necessarily getting cheap, but it's getting a return on that investment, and that's what NZTA requires of us. We did use the lever of price to increase patronage, and certainly was the case during COVID and the recovery from COVID, and we did have some successful increases in patronage. Since I think 2015 right up until last year, patronage was just consistently dropping year on year. It is now, the last 18 months it's picked up. So the response has been quite good, and that's a combination of different levers including price, but also looking at the service that we provide. Now the new government policy statement, the GPS, has an emphasis on economic return, basically across all avenues. They do retain the community part of a bus service, but they want to see some sort of return on investment. It's not clear to me whether that's tangible or intangible returns. I suspect it is tangible. So we have to look at that as well. At the moment I'm working through a third-party revenue policy, which means that we need to look for other income streams. The government is requiring us to go through that exercise. And that may be advertising or just putting the fees up. Some way to cover costs. And it has a, I hate to say user pays sort of feel about it, but it's just getting people to take a bigger part in the financial aspects of using a bus service. Responding to environmental priorities, that's still part of the GPS, although it's not as strong as it was with the new one, but it's important to us as well. The zero carbon targets remain. It's both a challenge and an opportunity for us. Challenging in terms of we are going through the procurement of a new service at the moment that is very, very likely to be a zero emission service, including smaller buses and larger buses at peak. So we're looking through those aspects at the moment.
Doug, just on the economic return, is it a cost recovery, or I'm just trying to understand how a public transport system would deliver economic return? I understand probably for workers that are using it, but
Yeah.
you know, kids going to school, you know, there is a long-term economic benefit, hopefully.
Yeah.
So is it a cost recovery? They're looking to make it wash its own face as opposed to economic return.
I think the best we can hope for, Mr. Chairman, is break even. So I think it's
that's what they were asking.
It's
so.
Reducing the losses as opposed to trying to make it a surplus.
Yeah.
So just in terms of measuring that then, if it's also intangible, would that be, say, talking to ICL about how much is generated from the bus service being outside your door and people moving through the mall, and perhaps accidental purchase or accidental use, or you know, not non-planned use?
Or the better one would be probably the stadium and people going to the stadium to an event, wouldn't it?
Yes, or but something that uses scheduled services as opposed to commission services. Is that a means that we could measure?
It's a difficult means to measure, but I think it's worth making almost a narration of that. Yeah. I think it's something to raise, because it's a very valid point. When people have a destination and that destination is economically productive for them, and you get a return on that, so people are buying things and that employs people and so on. So it's that economic churn. I think it's a valid point, certainly. Separation of communities is something that public transport overcomes. So, you know, if we have
Yeah.
people in South
Social
City that
cohesion, yeah.
find it difficult, bus service solves that problem for them. It's one small part of it.
Do we also, as part of the welcome to the city package for refugees and things like that, do we actually make an outreach for the B card promoting the use of the bus service? Because I notice, certainly in my experience, that a lot of them tend to be on the peripheral parts of the city where they're placed in housing. So how much part can we play in them engaging with the bus service?
We've been donating B cards to the Red Cross for that purpose.
Oh, thank you,
Since
Lucy.
we started getting refugees in,
Yeah.
I've been liaising with Red Cross on that for some time.
Yes. Tom, did you have something?
I think it may have been said by Doug and Evelyn already, but I certainly take economic return as not meaning profit. It means economic return to the community or to the nation more broadly, getting people to their work more efficiently,
Yeah.
and so forth. You know, if you, it's extremely difficult to cost that, but I'm sure that's what it means rather than actually council having to make a profit.
Yeah. It'd be good to clarify that.
Oh, certainly, yeah, it would. I think the way I've looked at that is vehicle kilometres travelled. So
What's that?
Vehicle kilometres travelled. So
Oh, yeah.
when I do a calculation for a new project, I look at travel time. I look at vehicle kilometres travelled. There's an economic expenditure in that. And if you take that economic expenditure away, it's actually that money is sitting there for other purposes. So you can reduce that as a community. Yeah. So there is a benefit to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. So when I say our vision, it's probably Doug's vision, but well, it's a good.
It's ours until it's not.
It's a generic our, Mr. Chairman. At the moment, what we're looking at is something that needs to and should do, and in some way does at the moment, aligns to our ALTP and our RPTP. So we can't sit outside this. It's got to talk to all our other strategic documents to make sense. We need a service that is sustainable, and it's sustainable on all terms. It's economically sustainable, it's environmentally sustainable, and it's also sustainable for users. So they keep coming back, we get return business. So they enjoy the experience as opposed to tolerating it. Uses technology. We do use technology at the moment. It's getting a bit creaky around the edges, so that's one of the tasks I'm going to be doing with the new service, is to update the use of apps. I'd also love to see screens at the hubs, so you can actually see when your bus is coming, you know, this bus will be here in 3 minutes, in 2 minutes, and so on. So much like the Wellington model. So the cost for that is reasonably low, but it's a huge jump in the level of service that we're talking about. And again, we could have screens tracking buses too, because you can track them online. Why not track them live? We're looking for something that's cost neutral. There's not a single bus service in the country that makes a profit for the councils. Makes a profit for the user, for the provider, obviously, because that's their job. They're a company. But we don't really want to start making money out of a public service that's already very difficult to provide in a cost neutral way. Now, I've got structure for growth there, and that's probably personal ambition rather than reality. If we had population growth above 1%, we would need to account for that in a 10-year plan. If we were ticking over at 3, 4, 5%, that's quite exponentially over 10 years. That's a massive increase. So we just need to make sure that we've got a handle on what Invercargill's population will be. And maybe our growth will be outside our boundaries. Maybe our growth will be to the Wintons, to the Rivertons, and so on. And we do that in partnership with our neighbours. That could be an opportunity for us to do. Part of an integrated transport strategy, this is something I have nagging away at me all the time. All modes of transport should talk to all modes of transport. If you cycle, then walk, then bus, then car, whatever it may be. You need really smooth transitions, and it needs to be reasonably obvious to someone who's coming into Invercargill how to get around and what's the easiest way to get around. And those opportunities are there for us, for this service as well as every other service that we provide. Thank you.
Just on that, Doug, can you flick back to that one? Sort of hovering around in my mind is, you know, public good. in terms of, do we capture that in our vision? And it's a little bit to what we talked about previously around whether it's people coming to town to spend dollar, it's about connectivity and social interaction and cohesion. It's about new members to our community being able to sort of get functional in our community, which, you know, I'd crystallise up as public good, and I think from my perspective a vision needs to have something like that in it, because I think that's what a public service should do. You know, there's got to be that element of public good, but I'd be keen on other people's perspectives.
We need to acknowledge that public good comes with a cost. Not saying that we shouldn't have it, and there are many arguments for accounting for public good, but there is a cost that we have to meet to pay for that public good out of the general rate.
Yeah, but if you're looking, I agree, if you're looking at the measurement, the outputs of the public good from the public transport, then you can balance that against the cost. Absolutely, it costs, but unless you've got to focus on what is the public good of it, you know, what benefit is it having to our community? How do you counterbalance the cost argument?
The same way that we have to measure off everything we went through in the long-term plan is
Yeah, that's right.
what's the cost to ratepayers. I think, you know, we can find good answers for the questions. We just need to acknowledge that there's a cost.
Yeah. What others think?
Thank you.
They don't.
So,
Well, there's always, in public transport, there's always a public good
Yeah, but we
aspect,
haven't-
as Doug says. No council makes money on their public transport. It is essentially a public good.
Yeah, but we haven't
to
got it in our
acknowledge.
vision. We're not stating it in our vision.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah, I
And
think we do
probably
too.
every council needs to, because it is inherently there in every single council's approach to public transport.
it is.
So is one of the things that is, as part of this, is the minimisation of, we always laugh when we say this, but the clogging of the inner city streets and things like that, with people looking for parks, you know, how much of the people who come into city in cars actually need to bring their cars into the city, you know, if you're a worker, do you need to? The infrastructure that we build to cater for the extra vehicles that don't need to be coming, is that part of what we should be factoring against more use of buses? And is it one of the things that we need to be telling to people, okay, you want to bring your cars, the price for this is that? Or we can, if you use more public transport, you would save this and gain that? I don't know.
But that's a big balancing act with the scheduling of our bus services, because every time we have ever adjusted the schedules, we've had feedback that there are certain workers who therefore are put out because they can no longer use the bus services at the time that suit their businesses. So it's a balancing act that goes on and on with scheduling bus services, and how rapid how often our buses can run and on what routes they can run. So I think, Doug, would you say it continues to be a balancing act?
Through the G, yes it is, and that draws me back again to some work I did in the North Island, which nothing's ever sat in isolation. So encouraging people to take a bus, if you're in Christchurch or even Dunedin, inner city parking is eye-wateringly expensive. So if you want to park there, even lease a park there, it's going to cost you way more than it is to travel on a bus. So people make that decision point where, gee, it's $3 or $6 a day or something, as opposed to $20 a day. So they make those economic arguments with themselves. The community element of that is absolutely true and correct, and I do focus on intangibles, because when you do economic appraisal, intangibles have a cost as well, which you assign based on their value. So there's a lot of things in here that we need to consider. The value of the service is more than the cost, I think, is what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
The other question I would ask is, you know, if you were being quite blunt, you would say, do we need a public transport service? That might be a starting point. I know what the answer is, but that may be a question why do we have one? And we have a lot of answers for why we do. All right. Can I have the next one, please? Thank you. Okay, so the government policy statement, the GPS, we had one come out late in 2023 from the previous government, in the middle of 2023 from the previous government, which was quite different to the one that was brought out this year with the new government. So they have changed their focus somewhat. Economic return and value, again, is a focus of the GPS. They want to make sure that there is some sort of return for government investment. And I understand that is a very good principle to have when you're in government. This government is focused on building roads, roads of national significance and roads of regional significance as well. So that's an important factor in the way they've structured the funding. You will have heard of the pothole fund. The pothole fund is not just for potholes. It's pretty much a massive bag of money that you can apply to most things. Our maintenance funds are down on what we wanted, but above on what we had. So we're ambitious with our bids there. And the same goes for public transport. Public transport, we had a reasonably significant increase in the funding that we've been awarded. The work we need to be doing, and I'm doing it now, is looking at third-party revenue, commercial, and it feels, although it's not explicitly stated, public-private partnerships, which essentially is what we have now. But when you have private investment, you have an expectation of a return. So we're working through that at the moment with NZTA to see what we can and can't achieve in that space. Also, the data that we have with public transport performance across the country is a little bit nebulous at times and disconnected. We're still submitting spreadsheets with data on it rather than that data being collected centrally. So there's a bit of work there to do, and I know that NZTA are working through that at the moment. The reporting process is incredibly arduous, and every council that runs a service like this understands the troubles that we have with that one. And I put the last one in there because I think it's something that we need to do. The commercial reality sits with the operator, the person who's running the contract, and we need to balance that against our community need. So there is a cost and a value, and there's community need and commercial realities. We should not expect a commercial operator to operate in a way that puts their business at risk. So we need to balance that up as well, because we don't own a bus fleet, and it's a service we essentially need.
How long are the contracts for the commercial operators?
They're 9 years.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and they do need to be that long.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. If they're investing in new fleet, new plant, new infrastructure, the return on that is quite a lengthy process.
100%.
Yeah, so you don't see anything until about year 7, year 8.
No, that's right.
Yeah. Next one, please. Thought I'd give us some good news. What we do well, our fares are reasonable. They are on a par with some of our neighbours. Our on-time percentage is close to 100%. During COVID, and I've checked with NZTA as well, we were the only ones that basically didn't miss trips. When I was consulting for Regional Council at Otago, Queenstown and Dunedin had an average, I think for over a period of about a month, of 65 to 70% of the trips were missed. There just wasn't enough drivers. Driver shortage is not something that Invercargill suffers from, although we do need to think about succession planning for some of our drivers. Take that for what it is. Our recovery from COVID is clear, and I've got a graph here showing what our patronage did over the years. Now, COVID did not drop our patronage per se. The patronage was dropping long before that, but we have recovered really well. Our route timetable cater for the majority of our users, remembering that we do school runs as well. So we have a number of school runs we do as part of the public service. It doesn't mean the public can get on those buses, but they are timed to go with schools and drop people off, drop the kids off. Next one, please. And when I've said here challenges, our challenges with patronage is falling until recently. So it's also a positive news. So since I think I went back 2015, it's just a consistent year-on-year drop in patronage. I haven't delved into why that is, changing environment, different demographics, that sort of thing. But I think it's something we need to know. The quality of our service, yeah, it's adequate. You know, it's not setting the world on fire, and could be better and should be better. We want people to have a good experience, and the things we've looked at are, you know, obviously Wi-Fi on board, that's great, screens on board, just making a bit of an interesting experience for everybody concerned. The experiential ease of use. If something is difficult and complicated to use, people won't use it, ever. They will just turn away. If it's a first time user and they go, oh gee, this is too hard, you've lost a customer, you know. So that sort of seamless transition onto a bus is something that I'd like to pursue. Also the comfort of the ride, right down to the type of seating we have. We really need to dig that deep. Customer services as well. I did mention some, you know, we didn't lose any drivers during COVID, but customer service skills are important in these areas, how you interact with folk. And we did an intervention, I think it was in Christchurch, it was in Christchurch. Real problem with customer service levels probably not being great on the bus, and interventions were made. Training was provided, and the customers were far more satisfied when they were surveyed. So it's just about being, you know, being a decent sort of human being and being patient with folk. Oh goodness, can you go back one? Thank you. Demographic changes, I'll talk briefly about. We're getting old and equally young at the same time. There's a people in the middle. I'm not moving much, but we are getting an older population, so we need to account for that. There's perceived better options, and I use my personal circumstance. I live in Gladstone. It takes me 6 minutes from the time I leave my home till I pull up in front of ICC. My bus takes much longer than that. And so we have to figure out how you get over that hump from inner city living. I think you can if there's a convenience factor there for you. And like you say, the timing is always really important. If I've got to be at work at 8 o'clock, I need my bus here at 22 or 1:45 or whatever it is. So I'm guaranteed to get here. People want that surety. Yeah, reliability. It is a reliable service.
Before you go to the reliability, the gold card usage on air buses, is that on par or better or worse than Christchurch, Wellington, other centres? Have we got a comparison there for gold card usage?
Don't have it in front of me. I know that we're certainly on par with Dunedin, probably more so. Here we have a slightly larger elderly population here, but gold cards, because of the subsidies, and I think they were paying 25% of the fare at one point during the last 2 years. And of course the use goes up, but it's only off peak for the gold card. Yeah. And it is utilised really well.
So we definitely notice it.
Oh yeah, no, they are a significant reporting element for me.
Great.
Yeah.
Barry?
Yeah, is there a contractor considering getting electric buses? Because I live on a route that goes right around past my place, and the noise value of the buses, it's an airspeed into it.
Through the chair, the short answer is considering it, it's going to be a requirement of what we're looking at. At the moment, there are, I think it's Euro 5 class buses that are still okay, but we have to transition out of that in a reasonably short period of time. So I'm not sure that any operator is going to invest in a new diesel bus when he'll have to phase them out within the term of the contract. So it will be EVs, Councillor. Yeah. Right, next one please. Here we go. Right, so the zero carbon element is still in the GPS, so the government is still pushing towards that, and I think that's a positive thing. Our response will be to have an EV fleet, and we're doing our part. Yeah, so it's a very positive move for council's part. I've seen the EV buses working in Dunedin, and they are quiet, and they don't have emissions, and they don't smell when you go down. You don't rattle the windows. So they're very impressive vehicles. They are very expensive though. So that return on investment for the operator, we're talking about, well, last time I looked like a year ago, about 900,000 for an EV bus. So it's a significant investment, but I think the life of them is comparable as well. We've got buses that still run on Ministry of Education routes out in the country, and they would be 20, 30 years old. So your return on investment within the contract period is fairly heavy. One of the things that is a highlight, of course, is that the prices we receive for the procurement of a new contract are higher, or will be higher, and we know that's the case, and it's been the experience across the country that this is a more expensive service to run with EVs. Renewal of the contract in early 2025. We've had a second extension from the previous contract, so we will actually been through, I think, 12 years with this particular company. We're in the middle of procuring at the moment. We have our procurement plan ready. That needs to be approved by NZTA, and once that's gone through, we'll be going to market early next year. Should have it awarded and completed by March, which gives a reasonable time for the operator to get themselves in the headspace. We generally allow a transition once the contract's awarded. Certainly have done in my experience, so there is a time period that we would negotiate after the award of the tender that tells them how many we go, how quickly we roll the buses out. Invercargill's advantage, of course, is we don't have any more than 3 buses on the road at any one time, except for peak times with kids. So we're in a very good spot there to get this done at a reasonable pace.
Just on that, Doug, what, in terms of that process, is there an opportunity to, go through a preferred supplier procurement, and the benefit being that you can engage them in the solution? So, and my question in my own head is what could a potential provider bring to it in terms of a solution of functionality, or we might be thinking we stay with 40-seater buses, but they might be thinking you're better off to go with X and Y because it's capital more, it's a lower capital cost to them, but equally it's more functional and can be staffed easier because if someone doesn't need an X license to drive that sort of bus but needs that amount of I don't know. Just
through the chair, we did a registration of interest project a few months ago, and we got a decent response, and all of the registrations of interest expressed the need for, firstly, electrical, and secondly, for right sizing the service. So they have given this significant thought. So the operators know what's going on here. So it really did make me quite happy that they'd given it that depth of thought. So they are looking at various sizes of vehicles, they are looking at on-demand, they are looking at all manner of services to make sure that this service works in a proper way. And again, I'm excited about the fact that ICC may be an example to others of how to run a city this size, make it efficient and still meet the needs of our customers.
yeah, cool.
Sorry, Doug, I think it's just worth talking about the fact that you won't be requesting a tender to run a bus from A to B at these times. You'll be requesting proposals for the best way to operate the network.
Right.
For them
So
to
it's a
bring
network.
that.
Yeah, that's precisely right,
Network
Mr. Chairman.
contract as opposed to a
It gives them the freedom to innovate.
Yeah,
I think that's really important.
yeah, it is absolutely.
Next one, please. Thank you. And that goes back to my original cheeky question, which was, do you want a public transport service? I think we do. I think it's important too. So fundamentally, what should it look like? It should look like something that has been here for years. It should look like something that people look forward to using. And, well, at the very best, they don't dislike using it. What could it look like? It could look like something unique in New Zealand. And that's kind of where I'm heading. I want people to look at us, I want NZTA to use us as an example. So this is what you can do with the resources you have at hand. I've got a lot of ideas. It's not so. People say we should use smaller buses. Maybe, but a small bus still costs the same as a big bus. It makes very little difference in the terms of the long-term cost about how we run that. I do like the idea of on-demand because I think it'll suit the public between those peak hours. I also like to expand what we're doing, and Mr. Chairman, we spoke briefly before the meeting about meeting community need outside the public transport service. And I attended a meeting in South City a while back, and they were talking about young kids can't participate in sport on a Saturday because mum and dad don't have a car and they can't afford a great deal of things. That sort of community service, offset by any commercial aspects, is something we need to pursue, I believe. because it brings, it hits a lot of the values that I think we need to espouse, which is people participating in the life of Invercargill, whether it's sport, whether it's culture, whether it's whatever, or whether the family just want to go for a picnic at the beach. But there's a service there for you. Particularly for young people, I think their involvement in their community starts in sporting clubs and recreational clubs, and you get that lifelong habit. So little innovative things like that would be good. An on-demand service, a circulating service around the city. It just constantly goes around and around and around, and you jump on, jump
I
off.
loved it when we had it.
Did you? All right, I
I'm
wasn't
going
aware
to
of it.
get, I'm going to get councillors to do a bit of work here in a minute, but before I do, the one I thought about was the park and ride.
Yeah.
And it tweaked me a little bit when you talked about getting to work, and then when we were in the UK, they're quite frequent in the UK.
Yeah, I've used those as well.
So
in
what
the
is a
UK.
park and ride type system? I mean, it wouldn't look like the UK, which is massive big car parks hubbed up and sort of thing, but that concept of park and ride for work to service the working community or to service, Sandy Point in the weekends, for example, could be a
Yeah,
interesting
agree.
concept.
Yeah, I think it's something we overlook because of our size and because it'll only be used by a few people, but I don't think that really matters in the context of it.
You ever sort of thought about novelty buses, Doug? Like ones that look like trams, buses that look like trams or anything like that?
I've seen those, yes.
You've seen those?
Yeah, overseas.
Is that a thought?
Bull bus.
It could be. Yeah, I don't think there's anything off the table. And I think it's why not develop the element of tourism as part of this?
Yeah.
Make it fun. And like we say, a bus to a reti. What's wrong with that? Completely forgotten where I was. Right, so one of the key aspects here is budget. How much we actually do have to spend. NZTA have been quite, I was going to say generous, but I don't think they are. They've been appropriate with the bid that we put together for public transport, noting that every other council has had to up their budget to account for the new types of services that have been rolled out. What do others do? I've taken my lead from Queenstown and Dunedin because of my personal involvement in both those services. It's done very well, the recovery went very well, but we need to ensure that we have succession in personnel. We need to ensure we have succession of knowledge as well, so we need to pass that knowledge around. And that's one of the tricks that it certainly happened here, it happened in Nelson. When somebody goes, it disappears, and also we had mass retirements as well. So we've got to keep feeding this in as a viable option for a working future. Is it a good investment? It's a fantastic investment. It's a fantastic investment in your community, and I think we never lose sight of that fact. It gets vehicles off the road and puts people into buses, and at the very least, if it does that, it means there's less wear on our road, which reduces our cost. Because buses are essentially taking 30 cars off the road every time they run, if it's full. Viability. Viability is, to me, controlled by what we do in my department. It's viable if we plan it well, it's viable if we cost it well, and it's viable if we operate it well. We operate in partnership with our contractors, and they're aware that we have a shared skin in the game. And so we work very well together in that respect. And sustainability, again, economically sustainable. It doesn't damage our finances to a great deal, but it's also environmentally sustainable. I think we can't lose sight of that fact there. So it's very, very clear to me what we should be doing.
So I'll get the councillors to do some work. So you've got to come up with 3 words that describe the future of public transport in the city.
Next one, please. So fundamental goals.
Bree's got hers. Do you want to go around now?
Accessible,
Yep.
affordable, and safe.
Yeah, cool.
What was the
Who's
second
next?
Safe.
Safe.
I do talk with you.
Yeah, mine were functional, sustainable and public good.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, pretty much.
Expandable.
Pardon?
Expandable, because we want to
Expandable.
expand their services into areas like the on-demand.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Flexible was mine.
What did you say, Lou?
Flexible.
Flexible.
Yeah, so those things to me are, we need the agility to be able to respond to what the public wants and certainly what the economic times are. and it's really, really important that we are able to move in those directions all the time.
Yeah.
And
Some others? Alan, what are yours?
With regards to what?
3 words to describe the future of public transport in Invercargill.
3 words to describe it?
How you want it to be. I'll come back to you, Steve.
I'd like to be, I like the idea of the novelty thing. I think there's a potential in that. I mean, I think to do rails is 10 million per kilometre, so if you could do something that didn't need the rails, do something similar. I think, you could actually have a bit of a thing. It would become a bit of, it's like Christchurch without the rails.
Yeah.
And you may, coincide that with, actual public transport as well as a bit of a tourist novelty thing,
let's
Out to the
integrate.
transport world, out to
Yeah.
Motorcycle Mecca, out to, Booper, out to Rowena Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bespoke.
On a regular basis, and a tram-like looking vehicle. More than 3 words. Very hard to put that into 3 words.
Steve?
Yeah, I had a few more than 3 too. I had sustainable, easy, accessible, reliable, innovative too. I sat in Auckland. I headed down from Northland this morning and sat in traffic. For gridlock was a piece of that for 45 minutes, and I looked around at 3 lanes full of people driving their cars, just one person, each car. And I knew this session was coming up today. I thought, we have to keep on saying this, change our behaviours. That's the biggest challenge, right? But I thought it was ridiculous sitting in that kind of traffic. And what can we do that's innovative in that space? And I like where you're going around comfort, ease, and reliability. And we've got to make that option a better, easier option than as I drive myself to work and all over the place every single day, right? What makes it worth my while?
Yeah, the other one, coming back to your novelty one, imagine if you had one that was a public service one, so you get on and it went to the library, the swimming pool, the stadium,
Yeah, a museum.
and the museum.
Yeah.
And so you knew you were going to stop at those 4 stops.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Trish?
Yeah, a bit like the hop-on, hop-off buses you have overseas, that we could have a circuit.
Yeah.
But I also do like the idea of it's got to be worth people changing their practice.
Yeah.
Like you talk about coming 6 minutes from town, and I'm about the same, living in the same area, but if we've got people who are wanting to take it to work and get home after work, finish this at 5:30, it's got to be consistent for them to be able to perhaps catch a bus at 6 o'clock at night, after work or whatever. So there's got to be some kind of flexibility to meet the different communities.
Yeah. Through the chair, I think one of the things once we get through this initial stage is to review the timetable, review the routes, make sure we're meeting people's needs. We are assuming that we are. Some of the feedback at the last residence survey was that in places we're not.
Yeah.
And so we need to dig deeper into that. So it's a stage process that we have, but we should be reviewing timetables and routes every year. Little tweaks here and there. Every time a subdivision comes in, again, from a past life, we would make sure that there was accounting for bus stops in a new subdivision. So we would get the regional council, or whoever it may be that owned the service, to make sure that once these houses were in, that they ran the bus route through those streets.
Yep.
So we just need to, again, be agile, adjust quickly.
I remember when the refugees first came to Invercargill, I was responsible for helping them get to schools and things and get into the community. And there were very limited options. There were options for students to go to school, but for these people who didn't have cars and could go to a supermarket to get their groceries if there was something available, it just wasn't an option. So I think it's just looking at across the community, as you say, Steve, innovative and flexible. Those are probably the 2 key things that I think are important.
Alex, do you want to pop in there?
Yeah, I'm just going to share my ones, which were on demand, accessible and flexible, because I seriously think, and I think it's pretty much already been said, but I think we need to start leveraging technology more in relation to public transport, because it needs to be configured to be as convenient as possible for the end user, or we won't see any of that behavioural change from the parking outside the building in your private car kind of mentality.
Yeah. No, thank you. Rhea, did you have...
Probably Barry.
Barry?
Yep, I've got the idea. Reliable,
Use your mic, man.
affordable, affordable, reliable, get that technology in where you can tell when the bus is going to be there. Because a lot of these bus stops haven't got shelters.
Yeah,
And the ones that have got shelters, vendors have already had a go at them.
yeah.
So they haven't got sides. And for me, reduce the noise of the buses. That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
biggie for me.
It's got electric.
It's really rowdy at my house.
Okay. Tom?
I put affordable twice actually because it covers both ratepayers and the user.
Yeah.
And I put scalable because I think we'll probably have to start fairly modest.
Yeah.
Well, one of the problems that we have is that we are not a city that's got kind of dormitory,
No.
small villages, and then a central hub where
Yeah.
everybody works. We are not like that.
No, we're not.
Work is very distributed, and people can live anywhere. So if you say that nobody's probably going to want to walk more than 100 yards to catch a bus, and if you look at then all the possible combinations, I think it's actually probably impossible at this stage. So I think you develop something which is scalable in the sense that it would be able to
Yeah.
be developed in that sense, but it's got to be affordable
Yeah.
by both.
Yeah. Who else wants this? Darren, did you have three?
3 versions of accessible: disability access, affordability access, and reaching the right parts of town.
Yeah. Okay, Pani?
I just want to add to everyone, because I actually tautoko everyone's view on this. The reason why I use the buses in Wellington is because they are like 15 minutes between each other. Like there's a bus coming all the time. If you miss one, you can catch another. They go to key locations and points outside, within the township, but also further afield. So if we had something that was, on that sort of scale of things, I think,
Yeah.
it would benefit us greatly here in Invercargill.
Literally, somewhere like Wellington, you don't need a car.
No, that's
Exactly.
right. Most big
Anywhere
cities you
you
can get
want
away
to
with
go.
it, can't you? Christchurch is pretty good.
Well,
Evelyn?
it's classic. So is Auckland.
So as a frequent user of buses, both here and in Christchurch, I can say that, there's things I really like about the Christchurch service, which includes the Orbiter, and the fact that Supergold goes from 9 a.m. until close of business. So extended hours there. I think that when we had the circular route in town, I really enjoyed it. You could go from Farmer's Warehouse right round, drop off, whatever, and it's the same as the Orbiter in Christchurch. So those sorts of flexibilities. But the bigger thing for me is we've got to do something about the people in the south who never cross from out of the CBD to the northern part of the city, and so don't experience the likes of Queen's Park
Yeah,
or
that's right.
Donovan Park or things like that. How do we make our attractions accessible to the people who help pay for them? So it's okay if you've got a car, and it's, but it's not okay if you don't. And that's, for me, accessibility to those who don't have a choice. It's great if you've got a choice and you can choose whether you bus or car or taxi, but it's not great if you're poor.
No, that's right. Or young.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's everyone. Thank you. Righto, Doug.
Okay.
Heaps of feedback there, mate.
Yeah, no, I've got most of it. So we've drilled down to fundamental goals here. Patronage increasing year on year is a KPI we want to follow. High quality, I think we all agree that we need a high quality service, and we need a high quality experience that passengers are having, brings them back. Talked about experience. The demographic change I've talked about, that needs to be addressed and make sure we're accommodating of that over the next decade. In 10 years, I'll probably be retired, so I might need to get a bus. But a lot of people are getting old very quickly, and it's just the nature of New Zealand, unfortunately. And to provide a genuine choice that matches other choices. And the only thing they're balancing them up on is very small matters. So I want it to be a genuine choice for people when they can. Next one, please. All right.
How many more you got, Doug?
Not many. We're nearly there.
Yeah, we've got about 2 minutes.
All right, okay. Quick glance up there. That's the current state of affairs with patronage, and you'll see the red line there is roughly where COVID sort of started. And you'll see, the reason for the patronage drop was not COVID. It was just prior to that, the patronage was dropping and dropping and dropping. We've made a significant recovery in the last year. I predict we should hit about 180,000 to 190,000 tickets paid for by the end of this financial year. We're tracking that way, which takes us back to, roughly was that 20, a few years ago anyway. So that is a positive thing. Next one, please. This is a very quick snapshot of the demographic breakdown that we have. People under 25 make up 41% of our users, which is a significant chunk. Super Gold's only 11% there, but 41% of our passengers are young. So young and old make up more than half our users. Disabled folk are mixed in within that, and community services card, of course, folk that qualify for that are a very important part of that demographic too. So it was an interesting read. I'll be reviewing that in 12 months just to see where that's moving to, but I can't imagine the numbers will move significantly. They have in the last decade, as I showed before on the previous slide. So it's important we accommodate that, and that will be part of our public transport plan review, that will make sure that we can accommodate that change. Next one, please.
Covered that pretty much, haven't we?
There we go. All right. So I've been talking about money a little bit. We were granted the funding that's shown up there. 24-27, we've got 7 million. We had half that for the previous 3-year plan. So that gives us the opportunity to do some interesting things in this public transport space. And I think it's really, really important that we do. Total mobility, again, we actually spent a great deal more than we budgeted for. NZTA were happy to come to the party with top-up funding. But again, we have, I think there's 3 million. That will cover pretty much everything, including growth. So I'm quite excited about that we can accommodate a little bit of growth and maintain the service levels that we have. And it would accommodate everything I've been talking about, which is a move to higher technology, higher levels of service, and the increase in transport disadvantage funding, which we can help the folk in the city.
I think that's us.
That's it?
Yep.
Yep.
So any more, you'll come directly to you. So what's the next steps, Doug?
Next steps, I'll complete the review of the RPTP by the end of November. Working with a consultant on that. Once that's done, I'll bring that to council for review and approval, and then that'll form part of our strategic document going forward and managing what we talked about today.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you very much.